Welcome to the All Things Hidden podcast with your host, Krista Reynolds. Today's episode is entitled GeoEngineering. Save Our Skies, No Blocking the Sun, with Reinette Senum, former gubernatorial candidate in the state of California. And now, Reinette Senum and your host, Krista Reynolds.
Hey everyone, welcome back to All Things Hidden podcast. This is going to be a really interesting episode. Thank you for being here. Know that this is always for entertainment purposes only. We want to just bring in what we can. Please always do your own research, check your facts. I'm excited this week. I have who is kind of a friend. We've actually gotten to know each other over the last few years. We attended Music and Sky last summer. Her name is Reinette Senum, and some of you may know her. I'm hoping to introduce her to a lot of new listeners. Reinette is a local Californian. She is coming from Nevada City, where she was once upon a time the mayor of Nevada City. She has also been on different committees and councils there. She has a really interesting history. Her father, great-great-great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Interestingly enough, was called Foghorn Funston. And the reason, she has Foghorn Express. That is one of her main websites that people go to. And he was very vocal once upon a time when he was, I think, connected, and correct me if I'm wrong, to President Theodore Roosevelt. Was he not going to be maybe his VP?
Right. So this is General Frederick Funston. He's well known in San Francisco. He's known as the man who saved San Francisco after the 1906 earthquake. And he was actually on the ticket with Roosevelt as the VP. And he was out there pontificating around the country, campaigning. And he was talking about this great new thing called, the American imperialism and, right man's burden. And, it was not right man's burden. What was it? Oh gosh, I can't think of it right now, but it was American imperialism essentially is what he was really, pushing. And so Roosevelt and his team kept saying, you got to quiet down and stop pushing this. We're going to yank you off the ticket. And he wouldn't quiet down and they yanked him off the ticket.
I love it because you're like him.
Yeah.
I mean, in the sense that you believe, you went into our governor's race in 2022 here in California, I believe in a non-party
No party
ticket.
affiliation.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, which that takes a lot of guts, actually. So good on you for doing that. And I realize it was a stretch maybe to get to the finish line under those circumstances, but what you brought forth were some really important issues that
Right.
Californians weren't really looking at. And that's something that we're going to talk about today because you've kind of, traveled beyond that governor race and you're now heading into, and I believe, such a crucial topic right now that a lot of people have wanted to ignore and not believe it's actually happening. But we're coming to a big realization, not just here in California, but all over the country, state by state, people are waking up slowly to the idea that our skies are being geoengineered in a way that could be super disturbing for all of us going down the line and, just to our health and our well-being. And so you have so many things that you are working on. So what I want to do is just kind of follow your lead today on sharing with us a little bit about what's happening in this arena.
Right.
I know you started something called Save Our Skies, SOS. I love that. And it's an organization that is going to hopefully get involved possibly politically, because it looks like we may have to go that direction in order to see some change. But I'd love you to explain the issue of chemtrails, again, contrails, geoengineering, all these buzzwords that people think are conspiratorial. However, they're getting new meaning in this current day.
Right.
So I'm going to just throw it over to you, Reinette, and start just telling us what you want to share. What's going on?
Sure. So geoengineering is a very hot topic right now, and I became aware of it, I would say, back in between 2005, 2007. I'm here in Nevada County, California, in the Northern Sierra foothills, raised here since I was 4, used to sail as a child, looked at the sky all the time, do not remember these persistent contrails that are streaking and clouding our skies all the time. And so I became aware of it, and I became aware of certain iconic figures back then and even today, who were really kind of explaining what was going on with geoengineering. And to be very frank, I kind of gave over my agency in that I assumed that they knew the story, they had done the research, and their story was 100% correct. So I was very outspoken about it, even when I was mayor and city council member here in Nevada City. Took a lot of heat for it, but I could see that our skies
And
are being
what years was that
well,
you
I
were
was
mayor?
mayor, a city council member and mayor between 2008 and 12, and then I took a 4-year break, came back 2016 and 2020, was mayor actually when COVID struck. And I was still calling it out then. And in 2016, I ended up hosting or emceeing a geoengineering protest down at the Capitol in Sacramento. So I was very engaged, very involved, pushing it out, very, very edgy back then. I mean, still today somewhat, but back then especially. And then COVID struck, and that's how you and I got to know each other through COVID, and so many people I've met in the last few years. And I had to drop everything. So I kind of dropped geoengineering and just focused what was on my doorstep, which was all the COVID violations and what I was seeing behind the scenes in government and calling it out and running for governor. And so then about 2 years ago, we had a very catastrophic winter here in Nevada County and 60 feet of snow up in the Sierras. And we had a tree actually fall right here and just crash our house and destroy the side of it.
Whoa,
And
yeah.
looked like a war zone. The snow was, I mean, just trees and ponderosas had snapped and old mother oak trees were breaking off. And it didn't look natural.
Yeah.
But you know what? Now's the time to get back in geoengineering. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pursue these perpetrators. We know who they are. I'm going to go after them. So when I'd run for governor, I had run under the premise of the seventh generation principle, which is every decision you make today should serve 7 generations from now.
I
And
love
and and
that.
I've, yeah, and I've always said as a leader or as an elected official, especially once you get elected, how do you measure a person's leadership? Like, who are they really serving? Like, what does that metrics look like? And and I realized that I didn't have to figure that out. I just had to look back in time, and I realized that the Six Nations of the Iroquois Confederacy, they're the ones who had what's called the Great Law of Peace that originally inspired the Constitution. Benjamin Franklin, our forefathers, they hung out with the Six Nations of the Iroquois Confederacy.
Very
And
interesting.
what was interesting is that what was really important to them is the seventh generation principle. Every decision you make today should serve 7 generations from now. Great measurement, right? Is it serving generations, or is it taking away 7 generations? From 7 generations. And so I use that as my foundation, and that has actually continued to this day with my geoengineering work. That continues actually with everything that I do essentially. It's like, is this helping 7 generations, or is this hurting seven
Right.
generations from now? And so we started Gen 7, the 501(c)(3), 2 years ago. And then under that umbrella became Save Our Skies Initiative. And I put out a Give, Send, Go, started raising money, hired an extraordinary constitutional team out of Houston, Texas to pursue this. And what I did was we took on the story that I'd heard for 15 years, 20 years about what geoengineering really was. And interestingly enough, I began pursuing certain things of this narrative, this geoengineering narrative, and it very quickly would fall apart. One of the stories that we were pursuing and our legal team was pursuing, because we wanted to go for something that did not require years and years of court battles, tons of professional
Let's
testimony.
let's back up for 1 second though. What
Sure.
are you pursuing per se in regards?
Well,
Let's back up a teeny bit just so people kind of understand what you're going after. Like,
well, okay, now I was going to explain that.
yeah,
So we're going to be going after those who are essentially geoengineering our skies, right? Chemtrails.
chemtrails.
But what we're doing is we're looking at what's the best avenue for our legal team to pursue out the gate. Because we want to have a relatively easy win, get some street credentials, get established, get a good base, and then go to the next legal battle, right?
And you're doing this at a state level, a national level,
This would be at a federal level.
federal. Okay.
So one of the things we're looking at, we know there's clandestine programs. We know the CIA is doing a ton of stuff. We know that the DoD is spraying, pesticides at nighttime over urban areas, and people don't even know. We have a long history of weather modification. For instance, famously, the Operation Popeye during the Vietnam War is the first time we actually use weather manipulation, cloud seeding as a weapon, and we just completely washed out the supply chain of the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And it was after that that there was a global treaty to say, okay, you can't weaponize the weather during a time of war, but you
Right.
can during a time of peace. Big loophole. You can do it to your own people. Big loophole. So it's been going on, and we have tons of clandestine programs that we generally find out about 40, 50 years later, spraying, radiation or doing syphilis, stuff, or spraying bacteria or germs, whatever, to see what happens to the population. And then they follow them for decades. It's just horrific. And there's been nothing put in place ever in America that through an executive order or legislation or some kind of codification that tells us that these programs have stopped. So you just have to assume they continue. Now, granted, those programs are very difficult to find. Why? Because we don't know about them. They're clandestine, they're top secret. So that makes it very difficult. So ultimately, when it comes to those clandestine programs, they had to be pursued differently, like for instance, through the White House or through, let's say today, like Doge or, maybe Tulsi Gabbard or somebody,
Can
maybe,
these clandestine groups be in our government, or are
well,
they
it's
outside?
probably our military and our CIA. And there's also could be research organizations, there could be, universities, it could be, private companies, it could be anything, but more than likely, it's really our government, like kind of black ops. And it's really hard to find out about it.
Right.
You're not gonna even know about it, to fight it, to stop it, to even do a cease and desist. They're not gonna tell you. So that's a bit
So
of a trick.
okay, so this is definitely happening nationally here in America, no doubt. Like we're all feeling it, we know it. But now is this not happening worldwide?
I would have to say America is the worst, but it's really the NATO nations. It's the NATO nations that are, and I'll get into a little bit more of that later,
Hmm.
that are probably getting it the worst, and I'll explain how and why.
Okay.
So this is my thought originally was like, okay, we're going to pursue these perpetrators. And I assumed that those clandestine programs were also those streaks in the sky we see all the time, those persistent contrails that expand and expand and expand. And some days they're there and some days they're not. And sometimes they only expand a little bit, and other days it's just they block the sun completely. So I thought they were like kind of one and the same. Well, interestingly enough, when I started looking through the lens of, okay, we're going to take this to court and we have to pursue this legally and we have to have all the receipts, we have to have all the evidence, it's got to be very factual. No, no, just trying to connect the dots and not having, really good, strong, basis for our argument. One of the things in the geoengineering narrative is the reason why we don't know about these programs going on is because there's a gag order on weather modification programs, on geoengineering programs. And I always believed that to be true. And so our legal team, our attorneys decided what we're going to do is we're going to pursue not the clandestine programs itself. We're going to go for an easy win to kind of build awareness, and we're going to go after this gag order because guess what? The federal government does not have the right, it's unconstitutional to put a gag order on NOAA employees or weather reporters reporting on geoengineering weather modification programs they might be seeing. And so we're like, this is an easy win, right? It does not take, expert, witnesses. It doesn't cost millions of dollars for something like this. It's pretty clean and simple. So we start pursuing it. And interestingly enough, one of the things that we have to, of course, have available is the actual original source document of the federal government saying to NOAA and the weather reporters and meteorologists, you got to shut up. Gag order. You can't talk about it. Couldn't find it, couldn't find it, couldn't find it, couldn't find it.
Right.
It's in books, it's in magazines, it's on websites, it's all over the place. There's a gag order, but there's
Aren't
no
those
source.
NDAs, and more or less?
This what we ultimately found out was this is that it was through the public employees union essentially. They were having like collective bargaining negotiations going on. This is
Mm,
for like the NOAA, the weather reporters, and so on.
right.
And so they were having internal negotiations, and there was essentially a gag order, an NDA on internal negotiations
Mm,
that had
okay.
nothing to do with weather reporting. Had nothing to do with it. So the
Interesting.
individual who had been spreading the story, who's very well known, probably the most well-known figure in geoengineering world, um, I let him know, like, hey, I wanted to let you know that we found out there's no source document at all. This is actually misinformation, and we have to stop this because this is a false part of the narrative. Well, this individual continues to this day to keep telling people that there is a gag order, and it's a linchpin essentially because people say, well, why don't we know? Well, because there's a gag order. Now, granted, today that story's out there so much, there might be weather reporters who aren't going to talk about it because they might think there's a gag order, but it really does not exist. So that just fell apart, and I was like, well, that sure fell apart real
So,
fast.
why aren't people talking about this? Is it because they just don't really want to know and don't want to, or is there more to this?
Well, I'll explain it. Let me put it this way, Krista. Where I started 2 years ago, where I was 15, 20 years ago, and where I am today is radically different. And it was shocking to me. I had like an existential crisis because I had to have a real come to Jesus conversation with myself. Like, okay, are you in this to prove yourself right for the last 20 years? Or are you here to get to the truth, whatever the truth may be, and to get our skies healthy and clear again? What is it?
Right. Well, I love your mission. I just want to read it out to the group here. Our mission is to save our planet, starting with the skies. We are holding the perpetrators accountable and are educating the public about geoengineering. So
Right.
that's your
And I have to
mission.
say, I'm educating myself too simultaneously because this is the thing is that every single day I'm a student, then a teacher, then a student, and then a teacher, and it goes back and forth. And every single day I'm getting more information, and it's formulating our opinion and our petition for rulemaking that we're working on, and all these in our arguments, and I just didn't expect to be here, so I pull back and I have been bringing in different, experts, and talking to them. And what I'm always looking for is the evidence. Show me the evidence. Show me the receipts. Well, interestingly enough, there's one gentleman who I've known about for years, wasn't following him as heavily as some other ones, Jim Lee of climateviewer.com.
I know Jim Lee. I'm very
Yeah,
familiar with him. Yeah.
right. And so Jim backs his stuff up. I mean, Jim backs his stuff up.
He has
And
receipts.
that's where the rubber meets the road. So, and his argument is like, look at guys, yes, we all admit and we know there's probably clandestine programs going on. Why? Because they've been going on for decades and there's nothing to stop them. And again, I feel that our government is not a government, it is a cabal masquerading as a government. It's a bunch of criminals masquerading as a government. So when people would say our government would never do these things or allow these things, I'm like, well, the government you think exists in your head that you were taught about in school does not exist. It's truly a criminal cabal, is what it is, sadly. So,
And there's
what Jim
probably
was
money behind that. So, I mean,
money, control, power,
yeah.
all of it, sure. And
Yeah.
and and also, I would say probably even some depopulation. You don't want a bunch of people rising up and pushing and fighting back. So with Jim, one of the things he kept saying over and over again, it was really difficult, but he's saying like, look at, yeah, there's clandestine programs, but I have to tell you over and over and over again, what you're really seeing those streaks in the sky is commercial aviation. And I'm like, so wrong. I don't believe that whatsoever. And Jim takes a lot of heat for that. They're like, oh, you're a mole, you must be Illuminati, or, work for the UN. I mean, it just goes on and on. Well, what happened was with Save Our Skies is we started holding bi-monthly webinars, Save Our Skies Swarm webinars, second Tuesday, fourth Wednesday of every month for 6 p.m. Pacific time. We still do that to this day. And we started bringing on different people to teach people how to read Flight Radar 24 so you can track the flights, how to look at NOAA because all non-federal weather modifying programs, cloud seeding, snow augmentation, rain augmentation, all of these have to be reported to NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the what is it, Commerce, yeah, kind of a Commerce Department. You're required by law to report that since 1972. So we're teaching people how to find those weather modifying programs. A lot of them really are mostly cloud seeding, and how to track the planes and so on. And interestingly enough, a gentleman came along named Jeff Ray, and he actually only he lives really close to me here, about 15, 20 minutes away. And he came on, he said, look at, I would like to assist you guys. I've been watching you guys. I know you're earnest and you're sincere, and I want to teach you to read the skies. And I want to tell you about myself. And this was game changing for me, Krista, because he says, look at, I used to be in the Navy. I worked on an aircraft carrier as a meteorologist. My job every day was to go out there and read what is called the radio sonde data. Every day, every 12 hours, people from around the world, these little weathermen and women, have this machine that takes in all the data like barometric pressure and humidity and particulate matter and temperature, and they have it connected to a weather balloon, and they go out every 6 hours or 12 hours and they let it go up into the atmosphere, and it collects all that data through the troposphere, through the stratosphere, and on. And then it's put into a chart, and then he goes, my job was to look at that chart and to see right where in the atmosphere these jets could actually take off the aircraft carrier, fly at a level in the atmosphere where they could come back without a persistent contrail behind them showing the enemy where the aircraft carrier was. And I
Whoa.
was like, whoa. I was like, wait, that's a thing? You can do that? He's like, yeah, I can. That's my job. And let me tell you, Every single day, I can tell you, according to that radio son data, I can tell you whether or not, where, and if you're going to see any of those persistent contrails, or maybe you're going to have a crystal, blue sky. And I was like, no. It's like, he's, yeah. So for about 2, 3 weeks, every day, he's like, Reinette, this is what you're going to see. Reinette, this is what you're going to see. And it's like 90, 99, 99% accurate because the atmosphere is highly dynamic, right? And it's every 12 hours. So there can be some changes for sure, but it's really quite right on. When he did this every single day, I was like, holy cow, okay, we're not being sprayed. This is commercial aviation. And according to the atmospheric conditions, yes, some days you're going to see them, some days you're not. But the bummer is, whether you see those streaks in the sky or not, you're still getting spewed, right? So you might have a crystal blue sky, and you're like, oh, they're not spraying
Let
today.
me let
No,
me let me ask something though.
yeah,
Okay, I definitely this last weekend in the Bay Area was noticing this low grade haze by the mountains. I mean, I could see it off in the distance. My eyes burn all the time when I go outside these days. Like
sure,
they're
sure,
watering, and I think back, I really do, because I'm a pretty, I'm a yogi. I'm pretty observant to my world and my environment, and I think back like 5 to 7 years, I was not seeing that. I was
right,
seeing
100%.
blue skies, like with the actual blue color to it. And
Yeah,
so, and I have to ask, like, I kind of did a little research yesterday, and I looked to see, like, are there more flights? Are there more flights going on? Like, is that, because I agree, I heard this, that we have, this single use dirty fuel that's
that's right.
going into these
That's
planes
right.
commercially,
That's right. That's right.
and they're spraying out a variety of things. But I have to wonder, like, okay, I'm sorry, I got to ask this question because it's burning
Sure.
inside my brain.
Yeah.
Is Was this fuel changed?
So that's just it. So NATO created this single-use fuel, and what they mean by that is they wanted to be usable for jet planes, for like actual like Air Force jets, commercial aviation, tanks, right? Any kind of
I heard
military,
they're
any.
in
So they just wanted one
steamships.
fuel for everything,
Are they in
and it
ships too, going across the ocean?
in what?
Is the same fuel used in
No,
ships?
no,
No.
the
Okay.
fuel from the cargo ships is bunker fuel, which is the dirtiest, nastiest diesel, and that's where you're probably getting a lot of the haze. That is actually even worse than commercial aviation.
Well,
That's terrible.
well, we
And
have a lot
that's
of ships coming into San Francisco.
Well, you sure do. And
Yeah.
that's exploded ever since Clinton signed the NAFTA agreement and sent all of our manufacturing overseas. So we have been sending all of our raw goods over there and these gigantic, huge cargo ships the size of small cities, and they're shipping it all back. And the cargo ships are creating what's called shipping tracks and creating this cloud layer over the Pacific Ocean and acidifying the ocean. And that is a huge part of it. It is really, really bad. And it's highly controversial too. So the answer for that, to be frank, is really you got to bring manufacturing back to America and stop all the massive shipping back and forth. That is even worse, especially for the West Coast. And you do see a lot of that rain out over the Sierra foothills because it comes up. And when we do rain samples, the rain samples would be better actually, like let's say in San Francisco, than they'd be along the slopes of the Sierras because that's where the shipping tracks that cloud layer would kind of butt up against the Sierras, rain out, and it's killing the trees. It's just
Yeah.
it's being
Well, I
tree.
noticed the other day I went out for a walk, and I'm not kidding. It was stunningly beautiful, blue skies, and
Yeah.
it was really interesting. Within an hour, all these clouds came in that were just not normal. They were
Right.
not normal, and
And I'm right there with you. So I started to notice the streaks really like again 2005, 2008. The NATO single-use fuel JP8 was changed around 2000, oh, sorry, 1996, 97. And then it was also during that time, the late 90s and early 2000s, that airline tickets dropped and got really, really cheap, like JetBlue and so on. So all of a sudden, when there has been an exponential rise in commercial aviation, and I have to tell you, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And so one of the things that we looked at that also triggered our now current pursuit, our legal pursuit, what triggered it was when we saw all these anti-geoengineering legislation going on in all the states, which is great. It's popping off left and right, great. But the problem is that most of the people involved are relatively new to geoengineering and don't understand. And I have to say they're being misguided because they're saying we want these white streaks to end, and they're saying, okay, no more intentional geoengineering. Can't do that. Okay, great. Guess what? States have no jurisdiction over their airspace. Commercial aviation is considered unintentional geoengineering. And they have, again, they have no control over, over the airspace. And if let's say you're in Tennessee and somewhere like in Nevada, you've got some planes flying and that street, those streaks will come on over sooner or later, it keeps blowing across the state.
Right. Well, they felt like they won something when they got them banned, but there's no really way to ban them.
Well, it's the intentional geoengineering. So what's good about this legislation is that it's creating an awareness, like, whoa, this stuff is real. But really what they should address with this is the intentional geoengineering and the clandestine geoengineering. Like, okay, you can't have it originate from our state. It's not allowed. We can't pay for it. It can't happen, right? That is actually really good. But people are mixed up. They think that this anti-geoengineering legislation that's going on is going to get rid of the streaks in the sky. And it's like completely off the mark, completely off the mark.
Well, that's because of the commercial. That's just not going to
Correct.
loosen up. Yeah.
So when we found out that, look at back in 1963 was the last time the Clean Air Act was even addressing commercial aviation. There's like about 300,000, there's a few hundred thousand flights, like not even a million flights a year at
Hmm.
that time.
Hmm.
And their opinion was, yeah, it's this and that's not good for us. And it creates streaks in the sky. They even knew back then. It's just the cost of doing business. Well, now you fast forward and before COVID struck, we were nearing 40 million flights a year, 40 million. And that really jumped up in the late 1990s and early 2000s. That's when it skyrocketed and cheap flights are everywhere and the jet fuel changed and there's a lot more additives, via NATO. NATO is the one that sets these standards. And I don't like NATO. NATO's dangerous. So I don't trust them.
So, I mean, the word on the street for those who are aware of this is they're trying to block the sun.
Okay, so let me tell you, this is it. Okay, it's a long windy, and this is really relatively new information for the average person, as well as a person who's been in the geoengineering world for 15, 20 years, believing a base of assumptions provided by people that I never fact checked. Now I have, because why? I'm taking it to court. And my name's all over it. So I'm not going to just take something to court that does not have any standing. So what's happened is that we see, okay, all right, so the Clean Air Act has got to be updated. They're derelict in duty. The EPA, the Cal EPA, the FAA doesn't care. Derelict in duty. They've got to protect what's called the public trust doctrine, I should say. And that means essentially it's a seventh generation principle. It's your job to ensure generations from now that we have clean water, clean air, clean soil. And if this continues, we're in deep trouble. So rainwater samples. Very famously, we know collect rainwater samples, and there's all these heavy metals. Well, it ends up aluminum is the heavy metal. The other ones are metals. I just learned that recently from Jim Lee. And interestingly enough, there's barium and strontium. Some of that are from the sounding rockets that Elon's putting up for Starlink. Some of the aluminum also can be from the wear and tear from the planes. And so there's all these different factors. And I have to say, I recently found out through a gentleman, Jay Reynolds, who's with the Climate Viewer team, who's doing all this research, and there's a lot of stuff I can pull from that. And we're putting into our lawsuit and our legal pursuits. He's like, what's happening is these rainwater samples are being tested, but what you're not testing for is the natural elements like the silicate and the natural aluminum, believe it or not, that's coming over from the Sahara Desert, from the sand. And if you don't
Um,
test for those natural aluminum and silicate, because it's usually like 1:3 ratio, you're saying, oh, there's aluminum in the water. Well, yeah, but did you test for silicate? If you test for silicate and you get silicate, you're also going to get the aluminum from this. That's all coming from the Sahara. So, right, when you start to dial down, you're like, okay, not exactly the picture. But again, there's still heavy metals. There's still heavy metals in our rainwater samples and our snow samples. It's a problem. The other tricky thing is this. You cannot differentiate where they come from. They don't have like little markers, little signatures. You can't say, oh, this comes from aviation. Oh, this comes from bunker fuel. Oh, this comes from, manufacturing in China, because that stuff does. So when people say it's in our rainwater, it's coming from the clandestine geoengineering programs, it's like you actually can't prove that. And when we look at the pollutants, commercial aviation is not good, but what's far worse are the shipping tracks. And what's even worse is ground transportation. And what's even worse is all the pesticides we spray everywhere. So when I've been educating myself, like what's really like prioritizing what's worse, like what's the worst, it's like in that order. However, the unintentional geoengineering, the commercial aviation flying, what are they doing? They're dimming our sun.
yeah.
They're dimming our sun because that's what persistent contrails do. It creates a cloud layer. So guess what? because there's been this
But
exponential
why is
rise.
that? I'm so curious. Like, why
Okay,
would,
so what it is, what's happening is that when a jet is flying and it has its exhaust, it burns its jet fuel, there's exhaust. In that exhaust is nanoparticulate matter. And originally, about a year or so ago, I thought, well, we just have to refine the fuel more. Let's just refine it more. And what happens is when the conditions are just right, enough particulate, you need particulate matter. You need moisture. You need extreme cold, like 40 below, right? You need cosmic rays. There's these things you need to create this ice nuclei. And what happens when you have a particulate matter, that moisture will glom on to that little particulate matter and it'll grow and it'll grow. And if it's cold enough and it stays cold enough long enough, more and more ice will glom on, and that little cloud, that little persistent contrail will grow and grow and grow and grow until it spreads across the whole entire sky. I mean, we've got all the papers written in our references, by the way,
and
for
now
our
it's raining down into particulates we can't even see, and that we're just
it's
breathing.
nanoparticulate matter, which is awful
Nano.
because it does go beyond the blood-brain barrier. It's not good. It's not
Right,
good.
right.
And we have, 20-year-olds, children with Alzheimer's. We have honeybees with Alzheimer's. And again, the difficult part is we cannot parse out exactly where it's all coming from, but they're all contributing. They're all contributing.
Okay.
So what I say to people is we're not going to find a silver bullet to any of this at all. It's going to be a series of silver BBs. It's going to be a little bit here, a little here, there, and a little bit here. We're going to all piece it together and to rework ourselves, which in its own self can be really extraordinary because you can have a lot of great new, cottage industries and, different kind of industries and businesses can spring up from that and so on. So it's not really a
Can
terrible
you
thing.
go up against NATO though around fuel usage? No, see, this is where I think it doesn't just exist in America. I mean, this goes out to other countries.
Oh yeah,
And
these are all the NATO nations. So it has to be brought up. It does have to be addressed, and we do need to address this. And NATO is evil. NATO is, I mean, they're literally run by
what
Nazis. They were started by Nazis. They're Nazis. I wouldn't trust them. I wouldn't trust. So, and the trick here too, again, this is a bit convoluted, is so we consider commercial aviation to be the unintentional geoengineering, right? And all that anti-geoengineering legislation in the States is intentional geoengineering.
right.
However, industry could just turn a blind eye. And there's a guy named David Keith, who's very famously well known for saying many, many years ago, like an undercover video where he's saying, yeah, we can just spray aluminum particulate matter up there, block the sun. Yeah, well, great for us, but save us from climate change, but it'll cost our grandchildren. But basically, so what? Who cares? Terrible thing to say. Now, what he says today is we actually don't need to go out there and do solar radiation management like what Bill Gates is promoting and go out there and have clandestine programs to block the sun. Why? Because commercial aviation is doing it for us.
Yeah,
Commercial aviation
that's
is blocking the sun for us.
right.
Now, can that be weaponized? Can that be maximized? Can that be used against us? Yeah, it could. And that gets tough to kind of find that, right? If it's that kind of clandestine program. But the truth of the matter is whether it is, intentionally, allowing to grow and
Well,
expand.
we're in a solar maximum right now, and
Well, and it's so this
wouldn't
is the
we want to
stick.
be collecting the sun right now, like literally, because we're going to go into a solar minimum in
Well, we need the
2029.
sun. You just need the sun. You
Yeah.
you need to grow crops and you need to have the vitamin D and photosynthesis and you need sun. And if you have constant cloud coverage, you're going to be in trouble as a planet. You're going to be in trouble. And you're changing the weather. You are actually changing the weather.
Well, I also think you're changing people's psychology too. I mean, we're made
Well,
up of light codes, and so if we're not given what we're made up of, then we start to,
100%. And I have
yeah.
to tell you, it's interesting psychologically. I know people. Jim Lee knows people. Many people in the geoengineering world know individuals who, when they see the spraying, what they think spraying is going on, that day they don't go outside. They spin out and they're suicidal. I mean, it's actually psychological warfare. And so the individuals who've been saying that they're being sprayed and it's this and it's that, it's like you're actually without providing a solution, by the way.
Well, it's interesting because I won't go out and walk until the late afternoon when I think basically most of it has settled to the earth
Well, to
from the
let you
evening.
know, what's over your head is probably going to settle hundreds, if not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles away.
Interesting. Okay.
Hundreds of what's over your head is not settling on you at all, unless it's like raining out right there over your head. Like, yeah, they'll do it there. But if it's a blue day, you've seen the streaks, that's going to travel hundreds of miles until it rains out somewhere else
Interesting.
or falls out somewhere else.
Yeah, I think they've conveniently called this something like induced aviation fallout or something.
Right. Well, there's also it's called, mortality. Aviation-induced mortality. It's a real thing. And so when I heard about that from Jim Lee, I was like, wait, what? So everything from, obesity to, well, of course, death to heart disease, lung disease, diabetes is caused by aviation. And the closer you live to urban areas and especially to big airports, the more likely your life is going to be shortened and it's going to be
So,
compromised. It's a
oh,
serious thing.
so as we're informing people, you're educating people right now, and more people are going to learn about this. Are people going to become afraid to fly or feel that flying is going to work against our health and our
Well,
well-being?
the thing is this is that 75 to 80% of the flights in America are short haul, which is 3 hours or less. And I do suggest, and Jim Lee is, we're all suggesting this, like, we're going to probably have to make some kind of transition into like, bullet trains or something because we will lose our sun. And so if you can, I mean, if you can identify the main routes and say, okay, this is what we're going to do is we're going to transfer those short flights into, let's say, like magnetic trains and educate people why and really encourage this kind of investment. This could be vitalized America across all the United States. It could do so much things for rural area. But the thing is this is that I don't think we have a choice because at this point in time, we're going to lose our sun. And this is the scary part, is only 20% of the global population has ever flown. 20%, the vast majority of flights. And we're now at least 45 million flights a year now. 45 million a
Whoa.
year.
And that's just America, 45
Well,
million.
that's worldwide, but we're
Worldwide. Okay.
80% of the flights.
Wow.
So, and those numbers are really tightly held by the industry. It's really hard to get the real clear numbers. Some of the numbers we have are actually even double that. They don't want us to know, and I think they don't want us to know because if we knew there's that many flights, we'd be like, what the heck? So they really hold that information back. It's shocking how secretive it is.
Right.
So my point is that the rest of the world is becoming modernized and they have more access to better incomes and they're going to be flying more, which means we're going to be exponentially having our skies get whitened out. So when you see that whitening and like when you look over that horizon, that's what the David Keiths of the world, that's the solar radiation management geoengineers, that's what they want is they want hazy skies, supposedly to save us from climate change, which is another boondoggle, something that I believed in 2 years ago. And so that is just going to happen naturally
So
with
I've
commercial.
heard of something called the Frankenstein fuel. Like, is there fuels that are getting created that would mitigate this problem?
So the problem is this, is that the Franken, be careful what you ask for. You might make matters worse. It's called Jevons paradox because they've tried to use something other than bunker fuels, for instance, but sometimes it's chicken fat and plants that probably have glyphosates that you're burning. You don't even know what it is. So you have no idea what it is.
Well, it's always who's behind it too.
And who's behind
Do
it's
we have
it's
good
so
people figuring this out? Is
it's
the
complicated
question.
and it's dangerous in so many ways.
Yeah.
So really, and I asked a petroleum expert, I said, well, can we refine more of that nanoparticulate matter out of the jet fuel? And he goes, well, how nano do you want to go? And sure, you can like go out there and refine more and more, but if the flights continue to increase, I mean, it's a zero-sum game ultimately. So really, it's about reductions of flight, but we're not saying that you can't fly long haul flights like going over to Europe or down to South America. Of course, you have to. But it is the short haul flights that are the most and they're the worst because it's a takeoff and the landing. Takeoff and landing. That's when most of the exhaust is just spewing out. The takeoff and the landings are by far the worst.
Right. Okay. And so they're usually at what, like 30,000 feet. So
So
they're
that's between, yeah, you've got the troposphere, it goes up to 39,000 feet. But what's also happening, that's where commercial aviation is. But what's happening is that we now see the jet set, the Davos group, the WEF group, they're flying their private jets up in what's called the stratosphere. Now more of the commercial aviation flights are also flying up in the stratosphere. Why? Because there's no turbulence, there's no weather, so they make better mileage. But the problem is this. That exhaust, that particulate matter up there, will last a couple years, 2, 4 years, and it's punching holes in the ozone.
oh wow.
Whereas the planes flying down in the troposphere, as soon as there's some rain, for the most part, it'll just rain out. And so that is huge. And they're just it's for cost savings, is what it is. It's for cost savings, but it's destroying our ozone. It's burning our plants, our trees, our crops, everything. And so these are the things that have got to be addressed. And
Yeah.
so now, if you want to go out there and destroy and wreck the world, really all you have to do is just allow commercial aviation just to continue on the route that it's on. I mean, that's all you have to do is just let it happen. And
Um,
that,
I was
so
watching
why,
something with Jim Lee, and he was saying that Gates and all of them were indicating that technically they only needed about 14 planes to constantly
100%.
move
So
around and make and block out the sun. Like, and I think it's what calcium carbonate is what they're. So I mean, when he, I mean, Gates identified it as calcium carbonate,
yeah,
which
yeah.
begs the question: is that not intended and purposeful? And like he's actually trying to do something, and is that legal?
Well, I mean, currently, I mean, it actually it's completely unconstitutional. You can't be going out there and essentially knowing you're doing something that's unhealthy for us. It's in doing it clandestine without our consent and so on. We've learned that from COVID, right?
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, what Jim really points out is that those are the needle in the haystack. And we're all looking for the needle in the haystack, which actually is very, very hard to find because why? You're looking through 45 million flights a year. A
Right.
year, it's like 40 million, but you're looking through 45 million to find that one needle. And it's like
So,
really
what is
haystack.
Save our skies going after then? A change in
Okay, so let
fuel,
me, okay,
or
so what's happened is that because of the anti-GMO legislation, when we found out that it wasn't going to work, the Clean Air Act has not been updated since 1963 when we had a few hundred thousand flights, less than a million. Now we're at 45 million, maybe even more. It's like, holy cow, you got to update the books, you got to test, you got to do this, and you've got to really, as a nation, we've got to focus on how do we reclaim our skies because while originally I was looking for more of the clandestine programs, some of them would be like solar radiation management that Bill Gates is doing.
Mhm.
I'm now finding like, oh my gosh, it's actually the commercial aviation that is dimming our skies. So we are right now, in order to take the EPA, the Cal EPA, and the FAA to court, we have to exhaust all avenues. So that means we have to do what's called a petition for rule making. So for many months now, we've been putting together this petition, and it's got all the references, it's got all the data, all the studies, all everything, everything that we need to know. And it's essentially you're kind of building your court case. And we hired Jim Lee as our consultant because he could pull it all together. And then I've got all the data, I've got it, it's all written, it's all typed up, we got it. Now I'm putting in the actual legal format, and I am pro se going to be I'm not an attorney. But I'm not hiring a big attorney. I'm not raising millions of dollars. I'm not doing that. So we're having a consultant who's been very successful in fighting against some COVID madness, had some great wins in the courts. She is now teaching individuals how to litigate pro se, like be your own attorney in the courts. So she's going to help us on the technical side, make sure the
If
T's are crossed.
anyone can do it, Renette, it's you.
Thank you. Well, actually, I've
Mm.
always wanted to, I've always like, I'd love to get into a court and, and argue a case. So I'm like, great, I can go do it now. So my job is essentially is to put the case together and to make sure everything is backed up 100%. And again, the old geoengineering narrative that I truly believed in, spoke about, fought for, completely fell apart. I'm like, wow, yeah, there's clandestine programs, but those are the needle in the haystack. It's actually commercial aviation. Yes, the heavy metals are an issue, but it's the dimming of our sun, it's our sky, the blanket and the growing cloudiness that can ultimately do us in. I mean, do us in. And it's rising quickly. And so we've got to grab a hold
Well,
of that quickly and make
exactly. Like we said, there's a solar maximum right now, but we go into a solar minimum, a
right.
grand
It's not
solar
a good
minimum,
combo.
which is
It's
very
not.
scary because that's like glaciers.
Yeah.
That is
And
like
then you've
serious
got cloud
problems.
covers and so on. So one of the stories that most people in the geoengineering world believe, and I did too, was that these clandestine programs out there are out there spewing coal fly ash. Coal fly ash is this leftover remnants. It's like, ash from power plants. They have to scrub them. They have the scrubbers. They clean them out. They got
Yeah.
piles of this coal fly ash. And what they're doing is some people believe they're putting it into the jet fuel. I'm like, well, if they're putting it into the jet fuel, I suggest you go get some ash out of your fireplace, put it into your car's gas engine, and see how long the engine lasts. It won't last for a minute. They're not putting in the jet fuel. Then people are like, well, no, it's a clandestine programs in some commercial aircraft. And what they're doing is they have, they're aerosol injecting it and they're spewing it out. Well, I believe that. I thought, okay, and because I was told that over and over and over and over again. Well, then we started to realize, well, wait a second, there's plenty. If you go on YouTube, you can go on tutorials, you can go on to real cases, real life cases where you will see planes around the world when there's a volcanic explosion and there's ash, volcanic ash everywhere. Whole airports will be grounded, flights will stop sometimes for weeks at a time. Planes cannot go anywhere near even a tiny little bit amount of ash because it will absolutely burn up those rotors, the engines, and those planes will drop out of the sky. So once I realized, and I was actually flying a few weeks ago, and I kid you not, there's a streak right outside my window. If I could have reached out, I would have touched it. It was a persistent contrail. And I'm like, okay, so I'm supposed to believe that somebody either through the burning of the jet fuel, it's like they put into the jet fuel, or it's being aerosol sprayed, that there's ash in that right now. If there's ash in that and this plane hit it, we drop within seconds. Within
Whoa.
minutes, we drop. So the coal fly ash story, 100% is not true because if we were putting coal fly ash out there, planes, engines, the rotors, the engines would be burning up and they would be dropping out of the sky. Ask any experienced pilot if you can fly through volcanic ash. Because if you can't fly through volcanic ash, you cannot fly through coal fly ash. That story is completely misinformation, complete misinformation.
Okay. So it sounds like that is a big calling for you to really look for this, the misinformation, all this stuff that's
Yeah,
coming out.
and it's psychological warfare, and it's also a lot of these people are putting this information out without giving solutions, and it's like you hear these folks and you want to cut your throat. You ask, what can I do? It's too late. The biosphere is collapsing. There's nothing you can do. Well, let me tell you. Do you all remember when COVID struck and all the airports were shut down? Do you remember how beautiful the skies were?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
commercial aviation stopped,
Absolutely. Nature came back,
and nature came
everything.
back very fast.
Hmm.
So I'm when people are hopeless, I'm like, So I'm calling these individuals out that you've been with, you never present this information without giving some solutions because as long as we're still standing, there's always a way.
It's almost like we should
And
have a week a year where no one flies and we just recoup.
we actually should because I'll tell you, you will be shocked to see how fast your skies return.
I know.
Nature is amazing. The planet is amazing. She just needs a chance. But to mislead us and continuously
Can I ask
feed
you,
us.
let me ask you a real quick question though.
Yeah.
So, where do you feel that this dirty fuel is originating from? Out of our military, out of like national aviation? Where is it originating from? Like, where do we have to go? I know you've got these EPA and Cali, EPA and all that, but who do we have to get to so that we actually change the fuel?
It would be NATO.
NATO.
And
Okay.
it's refined here. It's refined here in America. Pipes to it's not trucks. They don't use trucks. They got the refineries and they pipe that to right directly to the airports. And then they test. And it's highly tested. It's highly, highly regulated. Now it does have a ton of additives in it for a multitude of different reasons, like a lot. And that is what changed back in the late 1990s with NATO.
Why do you think it's got these additives and these metals and everything in it?
Well, a lot of it is for like static electricity, lubricants. I mean,
Okay.
there's all these different things. But again, what else are they putting in there? And they might be putting things in there for like a good reason, but it could be getting us all sick. It could be
Right.
causing, I mean,
Are there
it's not
people
just
working on
kerosene any
technology
longer.
to improve this kind of fuel? Like, are there groups out there looking at this issue, trying to shift the fuel, like into a
Well, that would be us.
okay,
That
okay.
would be us.
And so
That
do we
means
have
Julie. That'd
scientists
be
that
climate viewer.
right who know how
There,
to
I mean, there's been a push for bunker fuel for sure, and but really, no, because what's happened is everyone's so focused on the clandestine programs.
right,
They're
right.
not focused on the NATO jet
Well,
fuel
that's why
and
we're talking
why.
right now because it's
Yeah. And so that's why I'm like, you guys, we're being diverted. We're looking for the needle in the haystack. It's an issue, but it's actually the haystack that's the bigger issue.
absolutely, yeah. That's why I'm asking. I'm like, do we
Yeah.
have people on
Yeah.
board that are
That's us.
looking at
And that's
this?
and that ultimately what we're trying to do is put in this petition for rulemaking, send it in. It'll take 6 months to a year to hear from them. But in the meantime, we continue to build our case, educate people, and give them solutions, really let them know like really what's going on, counter the false narrative, and just say this. If you're spreading a story, you got to show the receipts. There's a lot of people talking and they don't show you the receipts. They don't show you the evidence. They just repeat the story over and over and over again. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but my lens has changed. I'm looking for the receipts.
Right.
So once we do that, if the EPA does not adjust and change the rulemaking and how they actually, test for the soils, test the air, monitor the jet fuels, all these different things. If they don't adjust accordingly, then we take them to court
Okay.
and say this, we have a redress of our grievances. You have failed in protecting the public trust doctrine. You failed in the Clean Air Act. You've got to update it, and then at the same time, we use that as a leverage point and an educational tool to educate people, saying, "Look at you guys. Yeah, we know there's clandestine programs. You can deal with it over here. There's different ways to come and attack this. This is a big topic, huge, complicated topic. But when it comes to what you're seeing day in, day out, what we think is the aerosol assault is really commercial aviation.
Well, like you said, they're getting it done for free. It's just that,
Yeah.
our own planes are doing
Yeah.
this, and with
Yeah,
this
and you
fuel.
could, I mean, and the thing is that I ask this every time, and nobody's ever been able to answer me what has not been weaponized in our world. I mean, from religion to food to medicine to school to our government to media, I mean, everything's been weaponized. So why not take commercial aviation and weaponize it? And there is software out there that can look at the radiosonde data. And just like our friend Jeff Ray, who was always looking to see where the jets could fly, so there was not a persistent contrail, they could have the jets fly to make sure there were persistent contrails if they really want to weaponize the commercial aviation.
Right. And we haven't
But
even
you could
talked about
also,
weather modification, which is a whole nother subject matter.
but no, but that changes the weather. Those clouds change the weather.
Yeah.
The commercial tracks change the weather, right? It changes the weather. It creates a cloud layer. It changes the weather. It alters it. It's altering weather everywhere. And it's so dynamic, Krista. The weather is so that's why geoengineering should be just flat out illegal because there's just too many different
Well, it's
points.
getting in our rainwater, and then it's getting in our crops, and then it's getting in our food. I mean, I used to go and get spring water from somewhere, I'm not going to say where, and I was getting it for like 5 years. And then just recently, I started to get headaches drinking. I was like, whoa, okay. And so I have stepped away from drinking that. And it's disappointing, but I have to believe, that it's got a fallout in it from the
Well,
chemtrails.
there is definitely fallout. I mean, but the thing is, it's coming from everywhere. And one of the things Jim Lee has shared, and I will do a Substack on it in the future, is you find out how much sulfur, like the wine industry and glyphosate and the pesticides are spraying in California alone, hundreds and hundreds of tons every single year. And the EPA is just like, just tell us how much you're spraying. That's all we need to know. Not is it safe? Have we tested it? How much there's standards, there's limits? No, no, no. Just tell us how much you're spraying. And this is the thing is, you guys, the EPA, all of these agencies that were designed to protect us, they're all captured.
Yeah.
They're useless. I know as an environmentalist, when I say environmentalist, I mean like a real one, like a conservationist. Like I want clean water, air, soil. That's what I want, right? And I want us to culturally, through that seven generation principle, apply those principles throughout our decision making. I don't want big government coming down into my little life. We do need regulation in industry because we can't control that. But that seven generation principle is absolutely key. And so that's one of the things that I say to folks is like right now, unfortunately, I know as a real environmentalist that those agencies have been hijacked and they're not there to protect the environment. They're there to protect the perpetrators. And they've been doing that for decades. Decades. And a lot of that money that's going to the EPA and to these NGOs and environmental organizations are truly, truly just laundering money. We now know this for a fact. Doge, Trump, they've proven it quite clearly. They've been using them as laundering schemes. And it's horrific. I mean, as an activist, and I've started many NGOs myself, originally even around climate change. I started them around climate change, and I now know that's bull. It's absolute bull.
Well, that's the hard part is many of these people that are captured do not even know they're captured. They're like
I
stuck in
have
the
no
narrative.
idea.
They're stuck in the narrative of
Yeah.
global warming, which I believe was a scam from the get-go.
I don't
And
know. Yeah. And it's like we are the carbon. And I'm up here in cannabis area and they pump, carbon into CO2 into the greenhouses all the time to get the trees lush and green, the plants. And you need it. You can't live without it. And so they're trying to reduce the carbon. It's like, well, then we won't have food. We won't have leaves in the trees. I mean, do you understand how stupid this is? And so
well,
there's
this
this.
is no small order. What you're doing and what you're up to, this is no small order. It's like something we have to attend to. And I want to know, how can people, after listening to this and kind of hopefully waking up to this reality, what can we be doing? Now, there's a couple of things. What can they actively be doing to support you in what you're up to? And I want to discuss a little bit what we can each be doing to safeguard our health, because that's an important factor. Because we're ingesting all these metals, you think of like parsley and cilantro, and we need to start really being proactive to safeguard ourselves from being attacked by these
Right.
nanoparticles.
So first I want to say is I had some dear friends of mine, Josh and Adam Beagleson. Their dad was Dr. Harvey Beagleson, and he used to look at the dark field microscope for decades. He knows blood is holographic. It's holographic. It tells a story about your health. You can see it holographically within the blood. Amazing. And since COVID, there's been a lot of people looking through the dark field microscope, and they really don't have the experience. They're looking at dirty slides or air bubbles or dried blood, and they're just telling some tales that aren't accurate. One of the things that was really fascinating, what the Bigelsons were saying to me was that, Reinette, it's really important that we simmer down all this misinformation, disinformation, and fear mongering because fear mongering sells, right? We know it. All the influencers, Substack, it sells, and so there's just this constant escalation of fear. But the problem is this. Is that it's the most unhealthy thing you could be in for your body and your mind and your soul. And in fact, what Dr. Bigelson said is he could look through a dark field microscope and he said the one thing he would see over and over and over again that would heal the blood is when the person was in a state of joy.
I love that. I so believe that. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
I meditate on light running through my body every day.
Right. So so I'm really hell bent now to get people out of their fear because I've been in there. I'd see the streaks in the sky. I'm like, damn it, they're spraying today. And then the next day it'd be like clear. And I'm like, oh, they're not spraying. Oh, I can breathe. I can go outside and, enjoy my flowers. Well, it ends up that whether you see the streaks or not, they're still there. It's just the atmospheric conditions are showing you the ice particulate matter that's growing and growing or not. But nonetheless, if you go into fear and anger and all that angst, that's worse for you than any streak in the sky, any heavy metal coming down. Now we can detoxify, infrared saunas are good, and you said certain chelation is good. I mean, there's tons of different programs out there. Sweating it out is good, but that mental emotional state is by far the most important. And being in a state of joy is the most important thing. And let me tell you, from my own experience of 15 years of being, God darn it, they're spraying again. Now I see the streaks in the sky and it doesn't get to me. It
Yeah.
doesn't get, which is almost miraculous.
Well,
I'm
that's what
concerned.
happens to us spiritually when we evolve. We
Yeah,
actually, I mean, the struggle with being on planet Earth right now is that we have to be able to hold everything. And a lot of people want to ignore stuff. They want to put their blinders on and like, I can't look. I don't think I can handle it.
yeah,
But we're handling it. We're
yeah,
handling it. You're handling it. And it really gives us the impetus to get up and do something about
yeah.
it, like either
Yes,
to safeguard ourselves or to maybe help the situation. And
100%.
if it's not just educating the person next to you in the grocery line about, are you aware that this is happening? Are you aware that, you know, SOS Save Our Skies needs support and help on this process because, we're going to go up against the EPA. We're going to try to change, what's happening with the fuel, with this. Could you participate in any way? Could you tell a few of your neighbors so we get more and more people to be just aware of what's actually happening?
Well, I think the big thing, and you were hitting upon this, is that the big thing is to correct the narrative. And there's a lot of people in the geoengineering world who have been making money from this through donations, through their books, through their videos and films. And they don't want that to be threatened ultimately. Because I kept wondering, why are they insisting? Why have some of them threatened me when they found out I was going to pursue this? They were threatening me because they knew I was going to find out that their narrative didn't stick, that it was going to fall apart.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so that it took me a while to go like, why are they being so aggressive? Why do they hate my guts? I don't get this. It's because I was rocking the boat and looking underneath the hood of the car.
Well, anyone
And
would know in this day and age, everything's a moving target. Like and they're going to be like, hey, look over here. Oh, look over there. Like, and constantly we're looking everywhere and it's one thing out and things are moving so fast
it
that,
is. So the good thing for what we have here, though, is still a majority of people don't know about geoengineering. It is definitely rising. The number of the people becoming aware because of all the legislation is actually doing a great job. It's just we're still a little bit misled. But what I have noted, and many of us have noted, is that when you start talking about clandestine programs and they're spraying us like bugs, people will just close right down, like, oh my God, you're a conspiracy theorist. But when you talk about there's a massive rise in the number of commercial planes flying, and guess what? Those heavy metals are raining down on us. And oh, by the way, they're creating these persistent contrails and they're blocking out the sun. You will actually grab people's attention because they're like, oh, like that's real. They can relate to that. If you go into the conspiratorial, oh my gosh, is this they're trying depopulation program, you just close people down. So the thing is that making people aware of like, no, this is actually unintentional geoengineering, but it is having a big effect on us. And so that is the best thing we can do right now is when people get into the conspiratorial, they're spraying the coal fly ash, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, actually, as a matter of fact, did you know there's a legal case going on right now, a petition for rulemaking. They've put together all the facts, and this is what they uncovered.
nice.
Yes, there's clandestine programs, but we found out it's really commercial aviation. And I'm sure the petroleum industry and the commercial aviation industry love that we are looking for the needle in the haystack instead of looking at the haystack.
Interesting. So I want to go into the next chapter in aviation a little bit.
Mm.
And Google do no evil. Larry Page and Sergey Brin are up to some interesting things. I don't know if you've done a look into what they're creating.
Like many different things, but which one, what are you referring to specifically?
Well, one of them is I know Larry, and they're looking at doing a zero. They call it Zero Arrow, which is a flying taxi, which is all created by 3D printing AI. And I saw it actually happen in my town on 4th of July last year. They brought in one of their pivotal little aero taxis, and they lifted off and took off and went to the Golden Gate Bridge and came back. And it's noisy, but it's very interesting.
So they use solar power. What do they use to power it?
I believe it's electrical, and they're I believe it's electrical. This one was so, and I know that Sergey. This is what I let me see. He's focused. Has been very ambitious. He's working on a massive 120-meter long electric airship that promises zero emissions, a nod to both as his passion for aviation and commitment to sustainable technology.
Well, I want to say this. It'd be great. In fact, I did a presentation on my Save Our Skies Forum webinar last time, and I talked about the great manure crisis of 1896, where there was so many horse and buggies that the streets were just covered in manure, and they were literally choking on it. They're like, this is not sustainable. We have to give up the horse and buggy. They're like, get rid of your horse. And people are like, what do you mean get rid of a horse? We don't have anything else but a horse and a buggy. And then 15 minutes later, all the horse and buggies are gone, and there are these new things called automobiles. We're there, but it's in the sky. We're there. And so part of the education for us, like we're talking like, okay, we got to transition to trains. Well, not necessarily. I mean, this is what I'm saying, that, there's new boutique industries and other industries and manufacturing. This to me is like, this is the exciting part. This is not a bad thing. This is like, look at guys, this is like the great manure crisis of the late 1900s, but it's in the sky. We have to identify this is a problem and it's life-threatening. It's not sustainable. So everyone, let's light a fire under our bums, and let's go out there and let's find new ways to travel, air travel, ground transportation, whatever it is, so we're not burning jet fuel from NATO that I do not trust, with an exponential rise of commercial aviations, because guess what? Kind of funny, but we need the sun. So it's great. However, if it's electricity, we don't have enough electricity. Now, if we can tap in to, right, that Nikola Tesla energy, the free energy, which is all around us, we know those products exist. They were just bought by the fossil fuel industry, or not, it's not fossil fuels, it's petroleum. Don't believe that either. Bought by the petroleum industry and shelved. Those things are on the shelves. We need to bring those things forward and get them to market. And the more decentralized it is, the more that you can like kind of power it yourself, not have to build out a huge, gigantic, system like gas stations everywhere or Tesla charging stations, which are just lithium's an absolute nightmare. Absolute nightmare. Stop the lithium. So if we can find some way to tap into that free energy and then decentralize the system, personalize it, and then you can travel around, whether it's, by road with something that's not burning fossil fuels, or it's, as I said, flying your own vehicle, Jetson style, fine. That to me is where we are right now, is we're literally 100 years later, we are in the great manure crisis.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. We're looking for, new solutions. And I think we should keep an eye on what they're up to. I'm sure there's others up to this as well.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of his. I don't trust him. Big old narcissist, Google. I mean, my God.
Right.
There's other brilliant minds out there. And I think that we need to push the limits. In fact, if anything, I would recommend that every single year we hold a different, like, kind of X Prize competition type of thing, where this is the problem. Okay, get your teams together in a year, bring us the solutions. Whoever's got the best idea will fund you $100 million and put it to market. I mean, sky's the limit.
I love that idea. Sky's the limit. Let's get our blue skies back. Sky's the limit. This has been amazing. You have, I'm so glad we hit on the real issue. I think people really need to know. And I think you put in words how people can really wrap their arms around this and maybe help and do something about it and keep themselves healthy in the meantime, because
Right.
it looks like this is going to take a while. Like, it's not going to happen overnight.
Not going to happen overnight, but there's a crescendo. It's the perfect storm. We're riding that crest. We are gaining momentum. People are hearing us because we've got the evidence. We've got the
Yeah.
evidence.
Well, and
And
states are starting to recognize it legislatively, so that is waking people up too,
yes,
which
for
helps.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And so I just recommend to people, you can go to our saveourskies.org. And again, it's the second Tuesday, fourth Wednesday of every month, 6 p.m. Pacific. We have a 2-hour webinar, different guests, different expertise, answer questions, give updates. And really where you can find me in the updates. And also I will put out a post saying tonight's the Save Our Skies Storm webinar is Reinette Senum's foghornexpress.substack.com. I do other articles and things like that, but also I keep updating like the geoengineering and sharing things and reminding people. So that's the best place. And again, folks, I just have to say it's an issue. It's bad. It's serious. It has to be dealt with for sure. But if you're in that place of fear where you're not going outside because you're thinking, oh, they're spraying me today, you've got to stop it. Don't do it to yourself. It's the worst thing. It's much worse than the heavy metals. It's much worse than anything else out there. And just know we're going to win this. We're okay. We're divine. We're connected to the creator. We're here for a reason. Nothing is by accident. We can always do better, and we're going to. If we could deal with the great manure crisis over 100 years ago, we can deal with this too because we are extraordinary. We're bright, we're brilliant, and when we really understand the problem, we can find the solution really fast.
Totally. And we regenerate ourselves. Like, I
Oh, it
laugh.
works.
I go to the farmer's market and I always grab a stalk of parsley. And before I'm home, I've eaten half of it. I'm like a rabbit. And I just know I'm eating it to clear the metals. Like, I want the metals out of my body. I am, these nanoparticles are there. I'm ingesting them, but
Right.
I have power over this. I
That's
do
right.
not have to make them.
And we've been, there's been an attempt to try to kill all of us off the last 5 years, and we're still here. We're stronger. We're united. We're networked. We're more intelligent than ever. We're more defined in how we work and function and who we work with. And they tried and they weren't able to, and they're never going to. It's just that's not in our cards. And
Right.
so my objective is just to get the skies clear and I can go back to my garden and my pollinators and be happy, and I don't want to do this forever. I just want to be productive. And so as I say to people, I'm not here to misinform. I'm here to get the job done because I just want to go live my life. I don't want to be in the trenches forever.
Yeah,
So
no, we're
yeah.
so appreciative. Thank you so much. And I just want to share one little story before you take off. I read your
Sure.
latest Substack, and please go and find her Substack as well. And we'll put that on the podcast here. And but you spoke in this last one about a dog that you have named Peaches,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
Peaches is going towards the Rainbow Bridge.
Yeah.
In transition. And
Yeah.
you told the greatest story about how you came in to the house the other day and he kind of grabbed you and you put the leash on and he pulled you outside.
So
And
this is my partner, Susan. We live 4 minutes apart, and I've been here every night for months now because we're in
okay.
palliative care, and we got to, harness and carrying her out. She's 15, just an angel. Like they're all angels. And so I just drove home quickly to say hello to my lonely houseplants and grab the mail and a few items. And my partner Susan calls because you're not going to believe this because she can't get up without us. So I mean, we got her. It's neurological. It was arthritic, but now it's neurological, and
Yeah.
her back legs don't really function, and it's a harness that's just keeping her alive right now. So she goes, "You're not going to believe this," but all of a sudden, Peach just got up, and then I grabbed her, and she dragged me out of the house, and she was going so quickly I couldn't put my shoes on, and she takes us down the path down the hill. And it's a big yard. It's like, a quarter acre. And all of a sudden she stops, beelines it right for this thing. And I am sitting there holding her back, hips up, thinking she's just eating some grass. And after a while, I'm like, what is she doing? And she goes, I look over her nose and she's got her nose stuffed in this little, beautiful, sweet little delicate, blue flowers. And she's like smelling them. And I said, what? She doesn't ever smell flowers. I said, what kind of flower is she smelling? She goes, well, it's a wildflower. She goes, it's the forget-me-not.
Aw. Well, I have to tell you, I was in my kitchen and I was reading this and I was like tears rolling
Right.
down my face. I just thought that was the most beautiful moment. Dogs are
Yeah.
really special.
Yeah.
They come with a lot of unconditional love, and that's
Yeah.
not something
Yeah.
we always experience with humans. And so
No.
they really come into our hearts on such a deep level. And so my heart goes out to you and your partner, and your time with Peaches. And thank you again. Thank you again for being here, for just really enlightening us. And I'm hoping we'll win this good fight and
You will.
save our skies and come back to blue skies because I love it. Like when I was driving over here, it was cloudy all day and the skies became what is blue today as I drove
Well, and
here.
we had a taste of it when COVID, the lockdowns. Remember, the skies were
Yeah.
gorgeous. We can get back to that. But
Yes.
that was, by the way, and I know we're wrapping it up. We were at about 40 million flights then, and it dropped down to less than 20 million around the world. And that's how much the sky cleared up with just like a halving
Yeah.
of the commercial aviation. So just educate people, stay in joy, folks. We've got this. Don't let the fear get you. That's what the system wants. They want you in fear, and don't feed it.
I love it. Thank you. I agreed. Many blessings to you, and we'll stay in touch. And thank you so much. Thanks for being with us at
Thank you.
All
I so
Things Hidden
appreciate it.
podcast. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the All Things Hidden podcast. More content can be found on youtube.com under the All Things Hidden podcast. Thanks for listening. This show and many others is brought to you by Madmana Studios. For more information, contact us at latham@madmanastudios.com. That's LATHAM at Madmana, MADMANA Studios.com. This show is copyrighted by Madmana Studios. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025.